Hello, and welcome to our performance engagement training. My name is Brandon Tidwell, and I'm the Assistant Director of Human Resources, and I'll be leading our online training session today. In the spring of 2017, we started the process of doing a rapid improvement team. Working with Process Improvement Director Carla Roman, a cross-functional team of colleagues was put together to evaluate our previous process and then determine what we might be able to do better. We started by surveying the campus community, and what we found out from that survey was that our previous tool was not customizable. We were using a one-size-fits-all approach for all of our departments, and we know that just doesn't work at Augustana. Each department is very different, and the way that they do their work is different, and we wanted to have a tool that recognized those differences. We also heard that timing was an issue. So we were conducting our end of the year appraisals specifically in June, and what we heard back was that was a very busy time for many departments. Some departments' goals hadn't ended at that time, and so we wanted to create a process that would allow those timeframes to be more open. We also heard that there was an imbalance between employee behaviors and outcomes. And so that as we're assigning goals, we need to make sure that we're setting goals within a smart format to recognize what actually needs to be done. How do we measure this goal? How do we know when this goal has been completed? We'd also heard there was no alignment between college priorities and goals. So although the majority of employees did have goals, they weren't aligned with the strategic Augustana 2020 plan or necessarily the direction that the college was moving towards. And so our hopes are that in the future, we'll use that strategic plan to really cascade goals down throughout the institution, from each department to each supervisor and then eventually to each employee, so that each person on campus understands the important role that they play in their job and how that helps the college move forward towards achieving the overall strategic plan or strategic objectives. We wanted to focus on discussions and performance versus ratings. What we had heard was that when discussions were happening, sometimes they were taken off track by getting lost with the number. So if my overall rating was a 3.0 or a 4.0, too much time was being spent on just discussing the number and what that number supposedly had meant, rather than the actual performance that had happened throughout the year. And so we wanted to change that to make these conversations more focused on employee development and performance. There is also this perception that performance wasn't tied to compensation. So whether I had done really well that year or I had not done well, either way, I was going to get the same level of compensation or wage increase. We'd also heard about 20% of our employees and supervisors had described the process as being helpful, which was disappointing. We wanted to make sure that in moving forward, we created a system that was not only developing our employees, but that would be seen as helpful or useful in creating meaningful conversations between the employee and the supervisor. So our overall goal as a rapid improvement team was to create a performance management process that enhances employee performance, development, and engagement, and aligns goals with department and college priorities. A system that creates robust performance discussions on a frequent basis, has a better balance between behaviors and outcomes, uses the investment of time effectively, and is perceived as being a helpful tool by employees and supervisors. What you see in front of you is really the timeline for our new performance appraisal system. As you'll see, this system is open all year round, so we're moving away from having one formal conversation a year to encouraging multiple conversations or ongoing conversations throughout the year. Each one of those green boxes represents at least a specific conversation that the supervisor and the employee are going to be expected to have. So the beginning of the year will start out with goal setting in the September to October timeframe, and we really see this as a time for the employee and supervisor to sit down, talk about specific goals that are going to be assigned to them throughout the year and how those goals are going to be measured, and then also talk about the specific categories that are going to be assigned to them. We would hope that for this year, for 2017, by October 16th, that every employee and supervisor have sat down and conducted their first meeting, and 2 goals have been assigned to the employee, and they are listed in the system. During this same meeting, we would also hope that the categories have been selected for that employee and communicated so they understand what they're going to be rated against for this academic year. The next blue box is customized categories. Again, we are looking for a system that was more customizable. So before, there was a specific set of core categories that everyone was rated against, and that was it. Well, when our team got together, we came up with a new set of core categories, which we still believe applies to everyone on campus regardless of their job. So everybody will be rated against those 5 standard or core categories, but there's also an optional or an additional 9 categories that a supervisor rather can choose from to assign to a specific employee. And we would hope from the optional categories list that the supervisor would choose maybe 1 to 3 of those for this particular year. We wouldn't want it to any more than that. The next green box is the mid-year check-in, which is something new. So this is going to be the second formal conversation that the employee and the supervisor are going to have throughout the year. And this is going to happen in the December to January timeframe. At this meeting, again, the employee and the supervisor will sit down, discuss their progress towards the goals, and decide if they're on track, off track, or if the goal even applies anymore. And it's really just an opportunity to have a conversation to see how things are going and to change things up if need be. Throughout that time, from October through that December to January timeframe, we would hope that the employee has logged in maybe several times and has added notes to their system to let the supervisor know what they've done towards making progress towards their goals. The blue box on the bottom of the page is additional tools. As we've gone through these training sessions, we've heard some really good feedback from our campus colleagues. And although we're really excited about our new system, this really is the pilot or the test year. We don't think that we've gotten it all right the first time around, and we want to take your feedback into consideration as we move forward. So some things that we've heard that we're considering for next year would be possible feedback from peers, including feedback from customers, or even creating a 360 review for supervisors so that employees have the opportunity to give feedback on how their supervisor is doing. So again, that's not included in the process for this year, but we're hoping to be able to do so in future years. The third green box is the third and final conversation that the employee and supervisor would have throughout the year, and this is the actual annual review. This is going to happen in the May to June timeframe. At this meeting, the employee and the supervisor will sit down to review the goals again and to determine if they were completed and if they were completed successfully. The supervisor will have rated the employee on the 5 categories, the 5 core categories, and any of the additional categories that were assigned, and they'll present the employee with their overall rating. The overall rating and those scores are then used for eligibility for increases, a performance improvement plan if needed. So if things aren't going well, an employee is off track, we would create a performance improvement plan, which would have specific deadlines and dates and objectives that the employee would need to meet to get them back on target. Or there's also additional consideration. So if things are going really well and the employee has gone above and beyond and has really done something to step outside their department and move the department forward, move the college forward in some way, we want to be able to make sure that we can recognize that and basically make them eligible for additional consideration. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Right now, let's talk a little bit about goal setting. So one of the things that we heard through our meetings was that some of our employees had goals, but those goals weren't aligned to the strategic plan or strategic goals of the college. And sometimes those goals weren't SMART goals, meaning that they weren't measurable, they weren't timely, they weren't realistic. And so there really wasn't a way to hold employees accountable for meeting those goals. So we would hope that on a typical year calendar, May through September, you would be doing goal setting with your employees, sitting down with them one-on-one, discussing what their individual goals are, how those tie to your goals as a manager, how they tie to the overall department goals, and even how they tie to the overall strategic plan or goals of the college. On the website for performance engagement, you'll find that there is a toolkit specifically for supervisors. In there are resources and templates for you to be able to utilize specifically for goal setting. And we're even in the process of creating a goal library that will give you some ideas and examples to use in the future. Again, we're in the process of building that out, so there is some information in the system, but we hope to add more soon. The customization of categories. This year, by October 16th, the supervisor employee will need to meet and review appraisal categories and finalize what optional categories will be used. HR will create a discussion template with some talking points and things to consider, which will be housed in the online manager's toolkit. Training for all employees on the new process and what to do will happen between September and October. And again, we consider this as our pilot year. So we're open to adding additional information and or categories based upon the feedback that you provide to us. So when you're looking at the core categories list and the optional categories list, if something is missing, please let us know and we'll try and determine if it's something we could add or consider for the future. Regarding the customizing of categories, it's important to understand that we really see this as a two-way conversation. We would hope that both the employee and the supervisor discuss the categories together and then choose together which of those categories they think are most appropriate for them for that specific year. Please keep in mind that these categories can and probably will change from year to year based upon the employee's specific needs and areas of development. We would also say that it would not be uncommon, because this is customizable, to have two employees in the same exact job being rated on different categories. Once those categories are selected, they'll generally not change and will appear on the year-end appraisal. So what are those categories? On the left-hand side are the 5 core categories: adaptability and initiative, the Augustana Community Principles, collaboration and teamwork, job knowledge, reliability, and attendance. And you'll see that some of these look familiar as they were included on the previous system, and some of these are new. At the end of the day, we really feel that all 5 of these can directly tie back to each person's job on campus, regardless of what their job is. So each employee will be rated on those 5 categories. Then there's the additional or optional categories, and there's 9. Customer service, employee development, innovation and creativity, leadership, planning and organization, safety, student supervision, and technology. We would hope that you would add 1 to 3 of these additional categories to your employee based upon their specific skill set and job responsibilities. We would hope that no more than 3 would be added, as it would be a lot of information to try and set goals for the employee and could be overwhelming. At the mid-year check-in, again, this process is going to happen in the December to January timeframe. Individuals are going to meet with their supervisor to determine how they are tracking towards meeting their goals. They'll use the online portal, and those conversations will be recorded in the online portal, and notes can be entered throughout the year by both employee and the supervisor. The mid-year check-in will include an electronic sign-off so that we in HR are aware that the conversation had taken place. A template for the discussion provided will likely focus on progress and goals and any goal revision necessary, the priority tasks for the months ahead, and strong areas and opportunities needed for adjustment. The third and final conversation is the annual review, and we'd hoped that our process that we've created now has been made more streamlined, and that by the time that the supervisor sits down with the employee, the majority of the information has already been completed. The goals have already been assigned, we've already tracked the employee's process towards those goals, and the employee and supervisor have put in notes throughout the year, all of which will help drive that end-of-year conversation. The employer and the supervisor will have already set those goals, selected the appropriate categories, and completed the mid-year check-in by the time of the annual review. The supervisor will also provide an overall rating for each category and an overall rating. This process will be completed in the time frame between May and June. The rating scale for each category is the following. Previously, we had a 3-point scale system, and now we've moved that to a 5-point scale system. And you'll see directly in the middle is effective performance. The majority of our employees will fall into the category of effective performance, meaning that everything they're doing now is great. They're meeting the objectives of their job description. Then above that, we have high performance, meaning that there's little to no room for improvement, an outstanding performance, meaning very little room for improvement. Also, below effective performance is partially meeting expectations, meaning improvement is needed, or not meeting expectations, meaning improvement is required. The overall rating for the end of the year appraisal is the following. We found that we spent a lot of time in the previous years trying to decide between who was great, who was super great, and who was fabulous. Because overall, our employees are doing the right things. And so when we were going through this process, we decided to call a spade and say yes. At the end of the day, the majority of our employees are doing what is expected of them. And so we did away with the number rating scale and have come up with this. First is effective performance, meaning that the goals have been achieved or progress has been made. Everything is going well. Again, the majority of our employees will fall into this effective performance category or rating, and that's a great place to be. Then the opposite of that is at risk for poor performance. And these are the employees who are really struggling, that unfortunately maybe goals weren't met throughout the year. After multiple conversations, progress still isn't being made. And because of that, they're off track and their performance is not up to standard. And because of that, they'd be put on a performance improvement plan. And again, a performance improvement plan really is a window of time, typically 30 to 60 days, of a set goals that that employee is going to need to meet within that time frame to bring them up to standards. Then there's kind of a dotted line to recommendation for consideration of. And we really see this as being few employees on campus. This really is the people who have gone above and beyond in their departments to move their department forward. These are the people who have gone above and beyond to move the college forward. And by marking recommended for consideration of, these people could be eligible for an additional bonus, time off, and or professional development. This will be reviewed on an annual basis by the cabinet, who will ultimately make the decision each year as to what that special consideration will be. Now let's talk a little bit about using the online performance engagement system. Within the system, you're going to need to start by creating a meeting, and you're going to do that by using the Build the Appraisal option. Using check marks, you're going to select the appropriate categories to which you're wanting to assign to each one of your employees. These show up on the manager dashboard and the employee dashboard with the ability to add notes throughout the year. Manager comments will not be available for viewing by the employee. At annual appraisal time, these categories will appear for ratings. Any kudos received on each selected category will appear on manager's appraisal template. Now that you're a little bit more familiar with the system, let's talk about what your next step will be, which is goal setting. We want to ensure that when we're setting goals for our employee, we're utilizing the SMART format. By doing so, it allows our employees to make sure that they're doing the right things at the right time to help move us forward as an organization. So we want to make sure that we're set up for success, and we want to make sure that you feel comfortable utilizing and understanding SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant or realistic, and time-bound. It's a common sense approach to goal setting. Employees' goals will be tied to their manager, department, and college initiatives, and every employee can make a difference. It's up to us to let them know how their particular job and their role plays a larger part in the overall success of the college. Specific is the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. We want to make sure that we're being clear and use specific language. Don't leave room for guessing. Avoid negative language. Use action verbs like increase, complete, conduct, attain, and achieve. The employee and manager should work together to set these goals, and that will make a huge difference because then both will have buy-in for success. Statistics also show that people who write down their goals have an overall 80% higher success rate of achieving them because of doing so. So we'd suggest that not only you would put them into the system, but encourage the employee to possibly print them off afterwards to keep them in front of them and keep them top of mind. Measurable is the M. And measurable is how many, how much, what does success look like? Are you winning or are you losing? And what's the score? Use measurable terms like percentage, reduced time, faster, impact to the customer, safer, dollars saved, etc. Both employee and manager need to understand and agree on how progress is going to be measured to be successful. A. Attainable. What needs to be done to make this goal happen? The goal should be challenging. We need to avoid writing all or nothing goals. We want to be sure that the employee has the time and the resources needed to complete the project. We need to make sure that there's ongoing conversations between the manager and the employee built into the goal. And we need to be prepared for roadblocks. Remember, things happen and priorities change. So we want to make sure that we are taking a look at these goals throughout the year to determine if they're still attainable, if they're still realistic. And maybe they are, or maybe they're not, and we need to change those goals along the way. R is for relevant. Will this goal make a difference? And if so, how? Think about the impact to you or your customer. Does this goal make your own work environment better? When we think about relevant goals, we should also think about cascading goals and the need for open communication lines. Do you share your goals as a department or a team? Is it important to be doing the right things at the right time? Ask yourself, is my effort worth it? We need to be working on the right things at the right time to move the college forward. The idea of strategic goals, cascading down to department goals, cascading to manager goals, and ultimately to individuals is what we're hoping to move towards in the near future. Lastly, the T stands for time bound. When is this project expected to be complete? When will you be able to see key milestones or progress along the way? So if we're setting a goal that is for the entire year, there should be specific time frames throughout the year for us to be able to check in and make sure and measure the success along the way to ensure that the goal will be completed at the end of the year. So break down the project using a timeline, which will help ensure progress. The goal should be completed within this academic year and shouldn't carry on past. Open-ended goals tend to be forgotten and are hard to hold employees accountable to. We thought it might be helpful to share some actual goal-setting examples from across campus. And so we started by calling on our friends from dining. And one of the things that they wanted to improve was their grab and go. These are the pre-made sandwiches and salads that you can find in the snack bar. One of the problems was that when employees were covering for one another, there wasn't a standardized way or process of doing so. So the process was inconsistent, and also it didn't really provide good customer service, and also was having a financial impact on the college. So the idea was to put together recipes for each individual item, which our friends in dining thought would probably take about 15 minutes or so. Once that recipe had been completed and made, they would take a picture of what the end result was so that the employee who was putting this together would have a picture of what the success looked like, and they would know that they had completed it correctly because it matched the picture. They'd put together a distribution schedule including quantities based upon daily and weekly flow. Do we sell more of this sandwich on Mondays? Is Wednesday more popular? Are we making too many based upon the demand? And then lastly, they would roll out a recipe for testing for accuracy. The relevance is that the goal will lead to cost and waste savings, as well as providing a consistent product for our customers, regardless of who prepares the items. Next, we visited with our friends from the library, and their goal was to develop a new assessment tool for information literacy components of the honors sequence by the end of the academic year. The timeline was review the draft of the tool with the library's management team, ask a sample of both faculty and students to review the tool and revise as necessary, and used finalized tool in spring honors class. The relevance is this goal ties directly to the student learning outcomes, analyze, critical thinking, and information literacy. Next, we step by the Human Resources Department, and our goal was to explore alternative recruiting methods to increase a diverse candidate pool for open positions. Our timeline started with planning sessions, including brainstorming with team members and peers across campus. We'd explore opportunities available using social media and local organizations. Measure a success by listing good faith efforts and diverse candidates for each open position. And the relevance is that this goal will lead to a more diverse candidate pool. In facilities, their goal was to provide cross-functional coverage for essential jobs and tasks. We had an issue where when we would have employees who were out, there weren't enough people who were cross-trained to be able to fill in, and their duties are quite different from the residential side of custodial to the academic side. So one of our supervisors decided that he was going to meet with each one of their managers to determine which 2 new job tasks will be selected. One will be suggested by the employee and one by the manager. They're going to complete training with certain individuals, and then they're going to require job shadowing for both of those tasks that were assigned. They'll know that the employee is able to complete the job successfully when they're able to demonstrate the knowledge learned by doing the job without assistance. And they assure the plan is in place to maintain the skills when needed and continue to cross-train other and new individuals. This goal will allow coverage when employees are absent and provide students and staff with a safe and comfortable learning environment. In advancement, their goal was to support advancement fundraising through submission of $1.5 million in requests to corporations and foundations, resulting in over $400,000 to $1.25 million in gifts or grants. Their timeline was they would submit 25 corporate submissions and 35 foundation or government submissions by the end of the academic year. The relevance is the affordability and value with the long-term goal of financial viability. Remember, it's important to share your goals with your team. We encourage you to post them at your desk or by your calendar or somewhere within your department so our employees can see them and they can look at them on a regular basis. What are your department goals? Are they visible? Do your employees know what they are? As we went around campus with our Rapid Improvement team, we were happy to find several examples of departments that had posted their goals for employees to be familiar with. Our friends in the library have their strategic plan and goals posted front and center on their webpage for visitors and employees to see. In the IT department, they have a poster listed with departmental goals when you first walk in. In dining services, we found a poster listed specifically for upcoming weekly goals. And then in advancement, we found an employee who not only had the overall strategic plan, but their department goals and their personal goals and how they cascaded together. We'd encourage you, if you haven't already done so, that once your goals have been completed and assigned, to share them with your team by posting them. Going forward, we'll continue to have additional training for managers and supervisors. What we foresee in the near future is that we'll continue to have more training on understanding and utilizing the system, customizing the categories for each employee, and more assistance with goal setting. Future topics will consist of using the system to keep ongoing notes, new employee 100-day check-ins, having an effective mid-year check-in, documenting problem performance and performance improvement plans, preparing for the annual evaluation, and conducting the annual evaluation. So what are the next steps? Again, every employee will have a minimum of 2 SMART goals. Managers will meet with their team members between now and October 16th to agree upon SMART goals. Use the online manager toolkit for some goal ideas. Managers and employees will discuss progress throughout the year, include the mid-year review in December to January, and the annual review in May and June. Additional help is always available from Human Resources as well as other colleagues who were involved in the rapid improvement process. Here's a list of our team members who assisted with creating this new performance appraisal system. From dining, Dan Jensen. From facilities, Diana Kavanaugh. From custodial, Mario Magadan. From the library, Carla Tracy. From IT, Justin McDaniel. From the business office, Kim Warner, Laura Ford from Human Resources, and myself, Brandon Tidwell from Human Resources. Also on the team was Jill Roche from Admissions and Lisa Stahula from Advancement, who were no longer with the college, but we wanted to make sure to include them as the work they did was very important to the overall success and rollout of this new process. If you have any additional questions or need assistance, please feel free to reach out and give any member of our team or myself a call. Again, my phone number is 309-794-7141, or feel free to send me an email at brandontidwell@augustana.edu or lauraford@augustana.edu. Thank you so much for attending our training session today.